Hi everyone, Neve here and welcome to my art journaling channel. Today we're going to be looking at making a steampunk art muse doll using ScrapFX design products. So here's a quick look at the ScrapFX designed products that I'm going to be using, and I'll leave a link to those below in my description. Today we're going to be making an art muse doll, and I have covered how to do this before in my art journal video channel. So if you want to go and have a look at a different type, please go back and find that video. Well, all I'm starting off with is a box I got from my local $2 shop, and I'm filling it with some magic foam. Now, again, I got that at my $2 shop for a big sheet of it, but if you have florist foam at home or anything like that, you can use that. I used a skewer to punch 2 holes in, and that's where the legs of the dolls are going to sit. And now all I'm doing is just completely covering the entire box with collaged papers. These are collaged papers I've scanned in from my journals and from use it up sheets that I have in my stash, and I just print them out onto sticker paper, and they're really handy for projects like this where you can just slap something on and stick it all together. The fact that it's all bits and pieces actually works really well for this. Once I've finished covering it, I just punch those 2 holes back in again, and that's my base done. I'm going to add more to it later, but for now that's the base done. With some extra chipboard, all I'm doing is cutting out a really simple arch shape, and that's going to be the body of my doll. And again, I'm going to use the collage papers that I have on the left hand side to cover that. The heads and the feet that you can see me using are from Little Raven Ink Printables through her Patreon site, but you could certainly draw your own faces or get a face from a magazine or stamp out a face. I know Jane Davenport has some stamps of faces and so on. So you can get faces from anywhere. It's just something to put on top of your doll, basically, whatever you would like. You can actually use a photo of yourself or of someone you love that you're making the doll for. So I'm cutting out the arch shape and sticking that onto my body. However, it's really important that you also cut out a second shape, and that's going to be for the back of it. And do that before you begin. I always tend to forget that step, so just set it to one side. You'll use it at the end. I decided I didn't like the legs that I had. They were too small, so I've actually got a set that I drew myself, and again printed it on sticker paper, stick it on and cut it out of the chipboard. So it doesn't take long and just gives you that little bit of strength having it on the chipboard as well. So this is what's going to support my doll, and it's going to have some skewers going up the back to support it. Now you can see you can keep it quite simple, and that could be it, or you can add more to it. So I'm going in with the StampFX stamps, inking it up with some white squid ink and some of the gold squid ink, and just adding some extra marks to my doll's body. I'm having to re-ink my pad just to get the ink to work. It dried out a little bit. So those foam stamps are really fantastic. They absorb a lot of ink, so you can actually get a few repeated stamps with them, which is fabulous. Now all I'm doing is decorating my body by putting in some just torn up washi tape. I really like to tear it up into smaller strips so you've got those rough edges. That's just something that really appeals to me. In my stash of goodies, I've got this beaded trim as well. I used to do a lot of book binding when I was a few years ago, and I have lots of those beaded trims in there. So I thought that would be nice to have something dangling off the edge, and I'm just using double-sided tape to stick it down. Same with this button catch lace stuff. Don't know the technical term. I'm really not a sewer, but I found it in Spotlight one day and I thought, oh, that'd be nice, and I've used it so many times. And again, all I'm doing is using some double-sided tape to attach it to my body's doll, and you can see it starting to get more interest already. With this, I'm then going in with some more washi, and this is one of my favourite washies. It's from Dina Wakley, and it says, I will make my voice strong and my spirit alive, and I really love that. And the heart washi is from her as well. I love adding text to my projects. It speaks to me, and because I don't particularly like my handwriting, I love adding it with other people's beautiful handwriting instead. So now I'm going in with some Posca paint pens to brighten up the pink on those legs, because it just wasn't pink enough for me, and also to add some extra mark making to my doll. Now what you're seeing me do on that body is basically what I do on those collage sheets to begin with. I sort of put down some random collage papers, put some stamps over the top, put some washi on, and then make some marks over the top. So basically I'm just doubling up the process. I've already done it in the background and scanned it once, so I've now got a background, and now I'm adding some more stuff over the top. I'm attaching the doll's head with some foam tape just to raise it out from the background, and now I'm attaching the legs to the skewers. Now these are just medium-sized skewers from the local supermarket, wooden skewers. I'm using that red liner double-sided tape. It's a really sticky tape. It's much more sticky than usual double-sided tape. And all I'm doing is running a strip up the top. I'm leaving it a little bit longer because it's going to go up onto the doll's body, sorry, and to stick the legs to there as well. And you can see I've put the skewer, stuck them onto the skewers and stuck the skewers into the box, so I know exactly where everything's going to sit, and you can see it there. Now I didn't do this first. It is something I usually do beforehand, but I do like to colour my skewers black, and I'm just using a Posca paint pen, just a black paint pen, to do that. I just like the fact that it makes those skewers now invisible really to the naked eye. When you look at it, it looks like your doll's just suspended there. So this is where I get into using the chipboard, and these are some of the new releases from Scrap FX, with particularly the Steampunk fairy up the top and these beautiful antlers, which are actually Christmas antlers. But I thought, as soon as I saw them, I thought of this project. So the first thing I'm doing is painting my chipboard white. And the reason for that is chipboard by nature is absorbent, so if you want to put bright colours over the top, it's best to give it a coat of white so you get the true colour on it. Now for the wings up the top, that didn't really matter because I ended up painting them black in the end, but certainly for the antlers you'll see how bright the colours will go on, and that wouldn't have come out as bright if I hadn't put the white coat first. I'm just putting out some Dina Wakley acrylic paints in olive, evergreen and umber, and just with a fine paintbrush going in and just painting. I'm not being too particular because I actually wanted to sort of blend the colours as I put them on, and it ended up looking really lovely. I'm also doing this on a piece of watercolour paper. Now it may seem like a waste of paper, but this is how I create those beautiful backgrounds. I get a piece of paper like this, I use it to death, gets lots of ink and paint and stamping and stencil offcuts and all sorts on here, and it makes a really interesting background that I can then scan in and print out, so I've got those papers I can use in future. For the little berries and the flowers on these chipboard antlers, I've decided to use my Posca paint pen just to get that really fine detail in that. I'm so glad I did, because it's such a beautiful sort of vibrant colour, and it just made those antlers really pop. I'm also going over with my Nuvo glitter gloss pen to add some glitter to it, and then going in with my Inca Gold, particularly on the antlers, to give that sort of rustic gold effect. And that sort of ties in with the steampunk that I was planning to do with my wings here. So I just used up the rest of the paint, which was the umber, just to give that sort of aged effect. And I really liked that, and I decided I wanted to do a black base and put the Inca Gold over it because I really liked the look of that on the antlers. Now this is where I made one of my mistakes that you'll see me fix up at the very end. It's really important when you're doing 3D projects like this to think about what it will look like from the back. I've put all this time into painting the front. If I turn that over, it's going to be raw chipboard with a little bit of paint or splatter on the back. So at this stage, I should have turned both those pieces over and painted them black, just so that the finished piece looked finished. In the end, I had to do that after it was all constructed. It didn't matter too much, but if you're concerned about stuff sort of splattering through, do it before that's an issue. So I went through my collage stash, and I had all these little different buttons and little metal pieces that I thought I really wanted to add to my wings. I also felt really bad about doing this, but I knew I wanted to use these as wings, so I cut straight through the heart of the fairy so I could use them like that. But I'm really glad I did in the end. So now all I'm doing is using some ultra thick gel medium to glue my metal pieces down. Now it goes on white, but it does dry ultra clear. So and this is a really strong glue. It glues metal to wood, metal to cardboard, it just works really, really well. So I'm just sort of working out where I'm going to add all my bits and pieces. You can see I've got catches there and zips and hinges and just lots of things that I found floating around my stash. It's amazing what you find when you actually go looking. I decided I didn't want to put the zip on the wings, it was a bit too heavy, but I decided to add it to the front of my doll, which I'm really glad I did. So that worked out really well. And while I was doing that, I thought she needs something else, and I found these great hashtag sort of encouragement ones, which says own your own talent. Now, seeing as this is an art muse doll to inspire me when I'm working, I thought that was a really great message to have on my art doll, because very often we don't own our own talent. We find it really hard to blow our own trumpet sometimes, so it's good that someone else is blowing our trumpet for us. So I just coloured the front of that chipboard with, again, the pink Posca paint pen, and you can see by doing that I'm sort of adding those pops of pink sort of in three. So I've got it on the legs, I've got it on the body now, and I've got it on the antlers. So the doll is now sort of getting where it needs to be. And now I'm doing is finishing it off. And of course you could stop at any of these stages. I'm just being completely ultra and doing as much as I possibly can on this project because I was having so much fun putting it together. I'm using that red liner tape because, again, it's particularly sticky, to stick the wings to the back of the doll. I think it's at this stage I realised when I turned it over that I forgot to paint the back of the doll, and I needed to do something about that. So you can see how sort of odd it looks having that chipboard and not having it black like the rest of it. I'm using the little arch piece that I cut at the very beginning to stick it over the back. Now the reason I do that instead of just leaving it black is that helps to encase the skewers and the legs onto the body, so they're really firm, they're not going to come off. If I'd left it open, there is a likelihood it may have fallen forward and stuff. It just gives you that little extra bit of insurance that everything's going to stay where it's supposed to stay. So now I've cracked out my hot glue gun. The reason for that is I've got this little metal strip that I want to glue on to my page as well. Up the top, you see I cut out a crown, and I've just covered that with matte medium. I'm going to come back to that in a while, but it's important that you do that and leave it to dry and get tacky because I'm going to put some foil over it. This is now for the base, so I'm using this stencil. Arch is which the hand, the head, the heart all go together. So I'm stenciling it out onto some tissue paper. And what I'm going to do is then collage that onto my base. So with the hot glue gun, I'm just gluing on my antlers, gluing them from the back and then putting the antlers over the front. I loved how the frond sort of went over her hair. It really worked well for me. Excuse me, I'm just taking off all the extra glue. I've got a love-hate relationship with hot glue guns. They do work, but they make a mess sometimes. So now I'm going in with the stencil and just outlining it again with pink Posca paint pen. This is a really fine tip pen, so I can get that shadowing happening. And I think I do the same again with some white pen as well, just to add some difference. Now I'm going to trim this out really, really close to where the words are so that I can collage it onto my base of my doll's, the doll's base. Sorry, mental block of what I was going to say. And that I'm not going to get that white halo around it. I love using tissue paper to collage things onto my 3D items, but I really dislike having that white halo around it. So anything I can do to try and disguise it, I work really hard to do. So you'll see when I cut out the art, I'm really fussy cutting around it. So it's basically only the letters that you can see. All that excess is going. If you don't mind that, it's not an issue. That's just a personal preference for me. So you can see how it was fussy cut. I'm again just using some gel medium and gluing it on. Now I've found in the last few days, I've actually got a few different gel mediums. Usually I use a gloss or a semi-gloss gel medium, and I've been using a matte gel medium recently. I've actually found the matte gel medium lets everything dry and you get that white halo more so than you do with the glosses. So I've gone back to using a soft gloss gel medium, and I found that it just blends everything into the background, so it's a little bit more transparent or translucent than using the matte gel medium. So another tip that I've got on my channel, someone mentioned that if you wet the tissue paper first and then glue it down, it stays more translucent as well. I haven't tried that yet, but that's the next on my list because it really is something that drives me potty. I like having it as translucent as possible. Now, the only thing I wish about this, it really worked well and it's exactly what I wanted to happen, having that quote go around the base of my doll. The words were slightly bigger for the area that I had, so it sort of went over the edges. It didn't matter in the end, and I particularly like how the art stood at the top of the base. But yeah, if having things go over the edges bothers you, you might need to think about a different type of quote. You could certainly use stickers and so on to do that. So I'm just getting my crown now, and I'm just pressing on some gold foil. And when you press it on, it will look like it's doing nothing. You just keep going with it, rubbing it down. I put the heat gun on it a little bit as well, just to get it really tacky. I don't want a solid colour of gold. I want to have that sort of mottled effect that you can see there. It just really appeals to me, and it's got a lot of texture to it. And I think that's what I really like about that effect. So I'm just going to use my hot glue gun to glue down that little metal strip across the crown. I really wanted to include that somewhere on my piece, but I just couldn't work out where I wanted to go, and it worked perfectly on the crown. I've also tried to scratch into that little metal piece the word time. I didn't have the metal stamping mark makers that you can buy. I just tried it with I think it was my knife, tried scratching it in. So it didn't work too effectively, but when you see the close-up, you'll be able to see how those words come across. So I'm just putting the glue on now, gluing it down, and just adding in some final little bits that I'd found, a little black ring and a few other things that I found in my thing. I'm going across the metal strip with a black paint pen because I wanted to try and get some black into that groove of where I'd sort of scored in. It didn't quite work, so I just used a wet wipe to wipe it off. But if you have a look at the close-ups, you can see it. Now this is where I realised I hadn't done the backs of the antlers as well, and I put out my paint and actually realised I put out a blue paint instead of black, so I had to go out and get my black paint. And this is pretty much the end of the project. It was a really lovely project to do, and I loved using this chipboard in it. The steampunk thing just really appealed to me, and I absolutely fell in love with the antlers as well. They were my favourite bit, I think, of the whole project. I also really loved the hashtag on there. I just loved how the whole thing came together. So you can see the time at the top there, sort of scratched into that metal. So this is the finished project. I hope you enjoyed it. It was something I really enjoyed putting together. As I said, on my personal YouTube channel, I've got a link to doing some more Muse dolls that you can certainly go and have a look at, and I'll leave a link to that in my description. I'll also leave a link to all the Scrap FX products that I used in my description as well. Thank you so much for sticking around for this project, and I will see you next time. Bye!